All right, shalom, shalom, family. I'm going to get right to it. We're going to get right to what we're going to be talking about. Before I even start, I almost forgot our note. We're going to be talking about monophyletic families. Now, in understanding of genetics, this has become a major part of understanding. It's not often talked a lot about, but is important to know if you're talking about the biblical narrative. A lot of geneticists are actually speaking a lot about monophyletic families. Sometimes you'll see that when they'll talk about a D group, they'll connect it with an E group, or they'll talk about an E group connected with a D group, or you'll see something like a J group talked with an I group, or things like that of that sort. I'm going to show something real fast. When we were talking about the F group, I wanted to make sure we have a good understanding on monophyletic families because that's what we're going to do today. Today, we're going to demonstrate how all lineages today, right? There's a lot of different lineages. If we make them monophyletic to their root, we can fit them on a boat. That's what we're going to talk about today. Let me first explain what is a monophyletic family. Now, here's a question that I had asked to a geneticist. Now, the reason why I want you to understand this last part is because this question confirms what is a monophyletic family. So this question goes like this. So I say, yes, it is correct to say F-M89 is a grandfather of IJK, but not A and B, nor D and E haplogroups. Okay. Now, why is that important? He said, yes. Why is that important? That F is the grandfather of IJK because we need to know who is IJK because we have a fossil of IJK as one person in Europe. IJK is one person. So if F-M89 is the father of IJK, but not A and B nor D and E, we actually have a good understanding what that means, what that actually would mean scientifically, right? It's actually in definition of a monophyletic group, right? Therefore, by definition, F and IJK are monophyletic, meaning of a group of organisms descended from a common evolutionary ancestor or ancestral group, especially, right? Here's the especially. This is what's really important. Let me get this thing, close this thing. I don't know why this thing keeps popping up like that. This thing keeps popping up on me. This thing been doing this for a minute. But especially not one shared with any other group, right? That's what monophyletic is, right? It's a group that makes a family, but it doesn't make another family. Now, we get a perfect example of that in the biblical narrative. So we're going to do today. We're going to take a look at the biblical narrative, and I'm going to show you how modern genetics reflects the biblical narrative. It reflects what was illustrated in the biblical narrative. Because, for example, if we look at the family of Shem, right, the family of Shem would create many different lineages. It'll create people like Elam, right, Asher. But what's something, if we know the biblical narrative, we know Shem, right? Shem cannot create someone of Put or Canaan or Canaanite or someone of like Egypt, Mizraim, right? Because a Hamite will be a little different than a Shemite, and a Japhethite will be a little different than everyone else as well. So what we got to do is we got to make three distinct families that don't make each other, right? But they make everyone underneath them, right? And we can actually make that picture. And that's what we're going to show real fast today. We're going to talk about a full, complete monophyletic group that you can fit on the flood on the boat, right? That won't be like this. It won't reflect this image that you're seeing here. Jeanson is selling in a new book called Traced. Now, I have let me just make this clear. I think Jeanson is one of the better geneticists, right? There's a lot of geneticists that touch on this subject of monophylactics, and I can talk about multiple biblical geneticists or geneticists that believe the biblical narrative um, that have different opinions on how it splits. But we can get a perfect understanding by understanding the actual fossils and the actual splitting. Now, The way that we can actually illustrate that is actually the biblical narrative has the best solution. Match them exactly to the time of the flood, right? Make the groups able to fit on one boat. And that's what we're going to do. How can we make every group fit on one boat? I'm just going to put some understanding here, right? Most people that look at genetics, they know there's an early lineage. There's a very early lineage in genetics that we have to understand, which is going to be a group called A00, right? Now, A00, when you look deep into it, people who look deep into it already, know that A00 also has some connections to other groups like A000, three zeros after A. And there's another group called A000, right? A000, which is four zeros after A. The four zeros is actually Denisovans. The three zeros is actually Neanderthals. The Denisovans were supposedly before the Neanderthals, but they all existed at the same time and vanished all at once, right? I've been talking about this for a while, that is a clear piece of evidence of the flood. But let me show you something with a tree. Now, this was a tree that's widely accepted. We talked about a lot of different articles talk about this tree, because what it is actually breaking down the whole tree and making it unrooted. So basically, what you're seeing here is that you're seeing different lineages that when it's shrunken down and made more detailedly, there's a common understanding about A and B groups, that A and B groups seem like they're distant away, and apparently the A groups have a split between them with CT, with BT, and BT actually would make your A and B lineages. So you actually get from BT a lineage that would be right here. You will see a break, and then you'll see this B lineage over here, and you'll see this A lineage. But A and B is actually highly related. That's what actually we're seeing here. When you're seeing this right here, they're actually connected by a lineage called BT. Now we're gonna put it on a chart so we can show that there's one lineage that's not connected with these ones. That's connected a little different, which is CT. And that's what we're going to look at today, is that the lineages under CT will be a little different, but they're related. But these lineages that you see here don't make these lineages. That's what makes it very important. Why? Because we're going to first start with a little understanding of A00. So let's go a little down, and we're going to get a little understanding first of A00. So we're going to first put this on here because if you look it up, we've been over it before. A00 is supposed to be one of the earliest lineages. It's called the basically Y chromosome atom, right? If you look at Y chromosome atom, you'll see that A00 will be there. It'll talk about the lineage that links everyone together. Everyone has evidence of this individual that actually, when you look at the fossils, it's found close by Denisovan caves. And that's in areas where Russia is and things like that. But in that lineage, we can actually put that lineage already on here. So let's say at an early start, that was a lineage, right? Because the thing about Noah, let me show on this little picture here. Go back over here. And let me show something real fast. Let me go right here. So this will actually be BT and CT. I'll show that when we put that on the chart. But down a straight line will be A00. Now, if we notice how the family is with Adam to Noah, like for example, just to show a quick time frame, a little time frame real fast, so that as people were being born, many were dying earlier and things like that. But we got to remember that, you know, after Adam, right? We could just count some lineage after Adam. Let me go to one of these that's a little more clear right here. So we can see Adam, Seth, Enoch, right? Let's actually count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So like 10 generations, and then all of a sudden we're gonna have the flood. From those 10 generations, from that time, right? What can happen? How many throughout that time frame from here for 1,000 years? How many other sons can we have from Cain and Abel and all that stuff? That's what when we're looking at the Neanderthals and the Denisovans, they more reflect pre-flood people because they're people. A00 and all the other A's, like A000000, all that, they show evidence of pre-flood people. They show evidence that people before the flood, like for example, have genetic connections to these individuals because it was already a thought that it was like that, but they knew it for sure. So all this that you're seeing here is what they found was like Neanderthals and Denisovans. They all are wiped out, right? They're evidence of the flood. That's going to be solid evidence of a biblical flood happening. Also, in connection, when we connect that with how A00 is branched, we can note something really interesting with A00, which is going to click here and basically show it. If you've seen it, I'm might as well show this. Why am I so interested in this? Because I was doing animations. I wanted to do like basically as close as historically accurate animations to the point of what the biblical narrative is illustrating. Because I felt like whenever a lot of animations illustrate the time of Joshua, they kind of make him kind of toony and not as serious as he really puts himself out off to be. And also the whole event, how they walked around Jericho, how they were completely silent, no one spoke. It was just it's never illustrated like that. So I always wanted to do that, but let me show something real fast. I used to show this before, but I thought this was really interesting. There was a media a thing from the news. Let me see which one is this. That was a thing from the news that was talking about, every person is related, right? Every person is related by Adam, right? Genetic Adam. And they showed this like person from Africa, and they said, well, everyone was in Africa at such and such a time, at this time frame, and this exact person from this exact place, right? I just want to see where it is. Where is that? It's been a while since I went to this little thing. I gotta think about even what's in a minute since I've seen it. Right. I'm gonna just grab it real fast because here it is. So I was just doing notes on every character as much as I could and stuff, and get an idea of how they were and their characteristics and whatnot. But it was just interesting how when they talked about this person, I'm sure many people seen this, right? When they talk about the breaking news, the true reveal of the true Adam and everything, right? And the more you look into it, right, the more you look into it, the more you realize how interesting it is and how important it is to go to the depth of what's actually going on. Because really, it was talking about what it was talking about, right? I'm not going to show the whole thing. I'm just show a quick little maybe memory of someone will remind itself of it.
We followed the DNA trail all the way to the bottom of the tree.
So they say that, remember, they're saying that every branch from everyone today, when they bring them all the way to the bottom of the tree, which that's what you're seeing, this is actually going to be A00, so the bottom of the tree. So remember, the reason why they say bottom of the tree, because the tree comes out, it's always going to have a root, right? And it comes out and it's going to lift, these ones are going to be modern people and these are going to be more close to the root. So A00 will be evidence of the root. So we can say that we have a lineage that shows us that there is a root lineage, right? It has some links to ancient peoples. And that's why I was showing you with this as well, right? Going back over here, right over here. The reason why I wanted to show you this is because A0, you can sometimes see this on family tree, like how the chart is. If you see the Y chromosome, sometimes you see this little long chart. But I just want to show you where is A00 on this chart. And you'll see that it's actually 0% of the tree. And that's actually important because if A00 supposedly makes every, then it should be 100% of the tree because it would make 100% of the people. But the truth is A00 is a branch. It's also still a branch that technically shows evidence that it has connections to everyone else, but it makes its own family. It makes its own family pretty much. And we talked about that. We would talk about a family that was, his name was basically Albert Perry, right? They found him in America, South Carolina, and a lot of people were saying that he was African American. But when you seek their roots and find out where lineage leads all the way to, that it goes really far back. But let me close this. This is basically this line that you're seeing right here. This is A00. So the reason why that's important, say, is 0% of the tree, and that's what you'll see here when we think about A00. And just to show that, you can see right here for that thing I was showing you, I just closed this one that said 1090, and that's pretty much where you see where it says almost 32,000 different, the rest of mankind, right there. But there's a branch here with A00 that's going to lead to different people, different individuals, a different line. That's important because that's what this paper that I'm showing you actually talks exactly about that. Because when people were looking more into it, they realized something, that A groups weren't actually making everybody. A groups, in fact, there it's actually known that it's splitting off. From here, it's splitting off, and these ones are splitting off, and they're all making their own. They're all making their own. Even right here, this is like their own trees. But when going back, let me go back to over here. When going back in time, is actually interesting because we can note the Denisovan A0000 and this lineage we looked at in the area of Spain, this Neanderthal A000 have genetic connections with these lineages. And that's what we were talking about. We were talking about how these were all humans. All these show evidence of humans, but some are wiped out in time. So then there's another lineage, which is A0, but that A0T, we had talked about that when we was breaking down how it actually breaks down. Just to make it quick for the summary, right? We see a split of A0T into haplogroup A1B. It is A0 now according to the new design, right? Pretty much, we're gonna look at that with its subclades, right? Which go up on the top of the tree, and A1 which goes down, right? In other words, we see a departure of the first African branch, A0, from the main tree. And this is what's important about that split. That's a different lineage. And I'm also going to show that with a interesting illustration when we look at when Jeanson was talking about the nations of the world. He was actually talking about monophyletic when he was first talking, which he should have made that more clear. And that's what I'm going to direct this to as well and point that out. So right here, none of the non-African groups, CT among them, descend from that departed haplogroup A0. So it's letting us know that A does show signs of all the way to a root lineage because they're all connected to all people. But A also makes its own lineage. So that's letting us know something interesting that I'm going to paint real fast and show. So let's just put right here at the start, we're going to just put A00, right? We're just going to put A00. And from this point, we're going to actually get a split of a different lineage here. And that's what we're going to look at here. And that lineage is going to be BT, right? That lineage is going to be BT. Now we're going to get a different split from this moment here. And that's when you're going to get different lineages. And we're going to look at that real fast. We're going to get A lineages and we're going to get B lineages. So we're going to get some A lineages and we're going to get some B lineages, right? This is where it's going to get really interesting. I'm going to go over here. And now we're going to talk about something that Jeanson talked about, right? So we're first starting with the A and B lineages, and we're going to work to the other ones. So first, let me show a little video. This is the video that Jeanson had did. I'm going to open it up on YouTube and talk about it. As always, fair use, just for the sake of information and gain of truth. All right, so let me go to the spot I want to go to here. So now he actually breaks down, right? He goes through time. There's a lot of points in time that's actually important here that he doesn't show monophyletic groups, right? What's going on in these time frames? What groups are one? What groups are united, right? In those time frames, right? But let's go to where he reveals those united groups. Now, if you already seen the work of Jeanson, he already declared that this united group, IJ, are one. And he also said that they were Japheth. Now, we got to think about that. we're going to use his design as well and show that, just to show that. So we're going to take J and we're going to say that J is Japheth, right? We're going to stick with this little idea that this geneticist said, and we're going to work with it and see what it looks like. All right. And there's another group. Okay, so there's another group, Q and R, right? If we look at, let's go and open up. So let's open up not the A00, but let's open up 100% of the tree here. So now it's also important to understand how these also split, the real way that it splits, because what you're seeing here is a normal chart. I talked about that before. There's a difference between a normal chart and an unrooted chart and what have you, right? Unrooted chart is going to look a little different, right? Just to show real fast what that would look like. So a rooted chart would actually look like this. This will be an unrooted chart, be a little different. So we just pointed out I and J. So we just put out I and J, and he said I and J is Japheth. Well, now we also know that Q and R are one. They were on one stem. So they were on one stem. They were one. So I and J, they were on one stem. So they're on one stem. They were one. That's important, right? We're going to learn a little more about some other monophyletic groups just to point it out. Right?
Lineage in Western Europe.
I'm just going to skip a little ahead. So now we got an interesting group here. So these ones are actually, the interesting thing about R and Q and N and O, these were basically one with the next group that he ends up talking about, S, K, and M, right? All these right here are one group, right? Now, what's interesting about that, if we go over here, we can note where they're one at, right? Right here from K-M9. So K-M9 makes two main lineages, which is this one and this one. And both of these are actually Ks. One is like K1 and one is K2. So from here, you will actually get P lineages. So from here, you will get one lineage. You can see right here, it's going to be your MS and everything. Is where you get your M's and your S's. But they're all coming from this lineage here. They're all connected. And they all come from this lineage that makes P, right? From P, you're going to get a bunch of different lineages, right? P is going to make, what you can see here, different P lineages. And you can see your Q and your R lineages from your P lineages. But just to also understand that, right? You're going to have under here some other lineages as well. But note the root here. I'm just going to make it clear so you can see this. There's another stem from this P that goes over. I'm going to go straight. I'm going to go straight down. Well, a little back right here, just to make it clear. So right here, so remember, from this root, this is also where we get the Isham. There's a find in Russia of a lineage that makes all these lineages from a great-grandfather, one of the oldest finds of this lineage in Russia, that makes all these lineages. But you keep going down, and you can see you'll have your N and your O's, right? That's going to come from this lineage. So they're going to be on one branch. If I close this branch, they're all underneath this branch. So that's just something to see there, that all these will be one from one branch, right? All those will be one from one branch. L and T is included. So those will be one from one branch. They will all be from MK-M9. Now, what's interesting about that, if we go a little up, if we say that I and J is Japheth, right? What are we saying that HIJK is, right? We're gonna look at that. We're gonna look at that real fast when we go and try to put these things on a chart. So what's important, what we also have to understand is that we can look at it on a design like this. So what were we just seeing when we was looking at that little design? This is what we were seeing from CT, right? CT is going to be the group that we want to note here. CT is going to have a very important information to tell us. This is going to be CT. From CT right here, you're going to get a break, right? And you're going to get two groups that are going to be united. Now, let me make sure you hear this about A and B. We got to go back a little bit and hear what is said about A and B. Why is it important about A and B? because A and B are different. A and B don't start together. A and B are two different groups that don't ever start together. That's important. But there are other groups that are going to start together. We're going to look at that on their ancestral node. So let this play real fast.
And M, Papua New Guinea, Australia, so forth. They're all one at this point in history. In Africa, there is a division in lineages, but some of the major ones are still joined. A and B are separate from D and E, but A and B have not yet separated. D and E are one lineage. Of course, D is not going to remain in Africa, except at perhaps a very low frequency. It's going to become the peoples of the great Andes Islands, the very dark-skinned people out here, and Japanese, a third of Japan. Right now, it's joined to E. And E, of course, is going to become part of E. Is a branch of E is going to become the major lineage in sub-Saharan Africa.
All right, so now let's get an understanding what was said there. A and B was one, and D and E was one. Now that's what we got to note as well, right? A and B will be the lineages that are these, but none of these make CT. So that's important to understand. We already established that. Just to make the simple understanding, right? We already point out that all those A groups, all those different A groups, we know that it said none of BT nor CT. So not BT nor CT is made by those A groups. That mean those A groups are actually will be made by BT, and under CT will be different lineages, right? That's what we have to understand. That lets us know what all these A groups that we already went over, right? We already had the understanding that A doesn't make CT groups. So you can see right here, CT, what lineages are under CT? CF and DE. So we know that DE, lineages of CF and DE are two different lineages. These are two different lineages. And what's also important is the way that they break, right? CF and DE are not the same, right? DE and CF are not the same. So that means that if we have something like F, right, which we know F is F-M89 is going to make all these lineages, right? That's just important. That it is going to make all these lineages underneath it. So that's going to be very important. Let's talk about that. So we already have a separation, right? With this little design, we already see A and B is different, but they were one, and D and E is different, and they were one. And we got to note something with all these lineages because I and J is actually not that far from these lineages. Let's talk about it. I and J underneath CF, right? Because CF makes two lineages, C and F, right? Now, if we do something like, let's just do some concepts here. Let's make a circle here, and let's make another circle here, and let's make an oval here. All right. So let's make some concepts. Let's put some concepts here, just to get an understanding of what we're talking about here. All right. So let's say that J. Let's say that someone said J was of Japheth, right? And let's say someone said E was of Ham. And let's say someone said T was of Shem. Now let's say someone said that, right? Now, how can we put them on? Let's say all these represent one boat. These represent one boat. This is an example from Jeanson's idea because he says that IJ, he says that I and J is Japheth. He says that let me actually might as well add them just to get the little understanding. He says I and J is Japheth. He says A, B, C. What else we got? D. And since we already have E there, and F, he says that these are him. That's what he says. He says these ones are him. That's what he says. So he says these ones are him. And he says that T and L, so T and L plus, right, the other K groups, right, which the only way to define that is like this. Let's go down. So underneath K dash M not this lineage right here. So basically the easiest way to put it, is that he believes all K dash M9 is from Shem. So that's important. Now, what's important as well, the way that these families are made, if we look on the tree, we can see that the families are made like this. If we look carefully, we can actually see where they split, right? Because we got to know what is what and who is who. Let me see. This thing is kind of offset. That's all right. All right. So if we go up, we can note that this is going to be CT. I already went over it before that this was CT. That's said on this thing. CT has a split, right? It's going to have your, where you can see here, your D and your E lineages, and you're going to see your C lineages and your B lineages and your A lineages. But notice how they're connected. So we're not counting steps. They're all going to be splitting from CT. So CT is going to break those. And then remember, A and B is actually one. A and B, which splits, are one. So these used to be one, united. So if they split from CT would be a parent lineage. So that's important. CT would be a parent lineage if A and B are one. So we got to note that. And then C, we found a fossil that actually links this C to this F. So right here, you'll see a branch. So you see a branch here. And if you go down the branch, you'll see right up here F. So this F right here, this F this F makes GH, and it makes the I and the J and the K groups. That's actually important. These are all going to come. These lineages are all going to come from the same M89, which is going to make all these lineages. It's R. That's actually important. Now, the reason why that's important because it's letting us know that these didn't descend, right? It didn't say that this A2 was here, but rather, or this A00 was here, rather the A00 is down here. That's why it was 0% of the tree. It's making its own lineages. So that's important. If we have F right here, right, and every branch breaks off from it, this is called an ancestral node. That's what that is. Now let's look at that on a boat, right? Now if we just conclude in all these groups that there is a Noah, right? There's a Noah lineage, right? I'm just gonna put right here, right? And let's say some would say it's connected to A00, right? I don't know what they would say is Noah or whatever they want to say. I'll just leave it like that. They'll just say a Noah. Now, I'm going to show you what I believe that it is, and just to make it a little more clear to understand the design. I'm going to put right here. And this is what I believe when we look at genetics and the information of these things, I think is only clear. Let me just make sure I put that there. I just think it's clear that we see a split, right? At Noah, right? At Noah, at the lineages of BT, right? BT and CT, right? Just put it like that. There. I'll just put it at the bottom. Something. Right? The reason why I'm saying that is because the lineages of BT and CT, that's where we see the split at. And that's where we see A and B connected, right? BT splits, and you're going to have A and B connected. Now, there's also another lineage, right? There's going to be a different lineage that I believe is Shem. Now, I'm just going to put these on here just to show what I mean. I believe Shem is a combination, right? A whole combination. I'm just going to make it a little bigger. All right. I believe Shem is a combination of D and E. I can show the evidence for that. Yes, I can. But today we're going to look at monophylactics, and I believe Japheth will be the break of CF because CF doesn't make anything underneath D and D and E doesn't make anything underneath A and B. This is what I believe that the splits are. We can actually, and from this moment right here, we will actually have a split that if this one's splitting at BT, then this one's splitting at CT, right? That's why I believe this is that the BT and CT represents that change, that split, that mutation, right? Because sometimes you'll see a CT turn into a full lineage. Because like for example, I was looking at the Natufian design. I thought it was interesting that I was talking about how the CT that was found there was a Yap lineage, and that CT became AE1B1B. I thought that was interesting because that's why I was expressing that CT shows that it can either become one of the CF lineages or the DE lineages. I mean, it's over those lineages, but it's not over the A lineages, but it makes the split that makes a B lineage. So BT and CT would be that split. You see what I'm saying? BT and CT, right? That the person Noah would have had a lineage, right? Being a relative of the lineages of the said A00s and all that stuff, but different than them, right? But different, but having a connection splitting from CT and BT. That from BT and from CT, you're going to get different lineages, right? And that's something that we can note here that we can get CF lineages that will make their own and DE lineages that will make their own. You see what I'm saying? And we can put them on a boat. We can put them on a boat. And for example, right? If I just put A and B as one and D and E, bad, A and B as one, and put D and E as one, and then put CF as one, I can have Noah and I can have Ham, Shem, and Japheth on one boat. But now let's try this with a different design. Let's try this with a different style of design. Let's try to make just some of these. Let's say we make F, G, H, all these. Let's say we take this branch here and we connect it with these and make all of these Hamites. Let's try it. Let's see what would happen if we do that. Let's see what would happen if we try to make these Hamites and try to make them monophylactic, put them on one boat. So let's try to do that. So this is going to be Jeanson's design, right? Because this is what he, just to show it, just to confirm it. So you can see right here, right? I was talking about this before he printed out his book, Traced. He had made A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, 1, right? And then he's made I and J 1, and he made all the K and 9 groups 1. So we're going to try to put that on a boat like that. We're going to try to design that on a boat, make a monophylactic. So what do we first got to understand? We got to understand what makes what. So we already see that he said IJ is Japheth, and A, B, C, D, E, F, he says it's Shem, and T and L, he'll say it's K. Now, here we go. There is a branch that's not accounted for in this. There is a branch that's not accounted for, right? And here's a question, right? Who is IJK? Who is IJK? Why is that important? Because on here I have IJK is accounted for in CF, but IJK is not accounted for here because if we look at the lineage of Shem, which is right here, and we look at the lineage of Japheth, which is right here, they actually both will come from one lineage, right? And that lineage is IJK. right? We talked about this before. It's a fossil. We can confirm it. We can fossil. IJK is a person, one person. But what does IJK not make? IJK does not make E groups and D groups. Why is that important? Because if I put the split at BT and CT, I can make Hamites and Shamites and Japhenites, and they're being different and not making each other. But if I put the split at IJK, am I concluding that this is Noah? Right? Am I saying that this lineage? Am I saying that this lineage is Noah? Is that what I'm saying? Because if I'm not, then I'm saying it goes further back. That can't be Noah. If this is Noah, we have to conclude that this lineage also makes E. Remember, I said BT and CT makes all the people, right? A and B, and your D and E, and your C and F, right? If a person had a combination of BT, CT, that can be one person. That gets his mutation split. They split, and they make three different sons, and those three different sons have different distinct lineages that don't make each other. But remember, at this design, IJK, right, is going to split and make IJ and K. But it doesn't make D and E, nor A and B or C. So this isn't a father. This cannot be a father lineage of F. It can't be a father lineage of F. You see what I'm saying? Because F, let's go and look at what we're saying here. What he's saying when I'm saying it can't be the father of F, right? Because remember, he's saying that the split is at IJ and K, right? The split is at IJ and K, that this is going to be a son of Noah, and this is going to be a son of Noah, right? But if we conclude that the split is at IJK, then who are we concluding is the father of these, if these are Hamites? If IJK splits and makes IJ and K, IJK doesn't make these lineages, and that's what a monophyletic group is, right? Let me just show what I'm saying when I say that, right? When I'm saying monophyletic group and whatnot. Let me go back up to what we was pointing out with the geneticists, right? That's why we're looking at this. We had talked about this before when we were talking about where did all modern people begin and everything, right? That's what we was looking at right here, right? There's a little chart of where the Eurasians began and everything, where Europe and Asia, right? The people started up in the upper area, then it came down. But let's take a look here. I want to show you something again from this little saying here, right? Yes, then it's correct to say F-M89 is the grandfather of IJK, but not A and B nor D and E haplogroups. If F doesn't make D and E, then IJK doesn't make D and E, right? That's important because F-M89 is the grandfather of every group of IJK, but not D and E and A and B, right? And IJK is said the split that he says is at IJK. That IJ is one group and K is one group, but IJK is a person. IJK is a fossil. It's a person. So IJK has to be, if it's said to be Noah, if it's said to make the lineages of Noah, it has to make three lineages, complete and completion, right? So that's what's really important. That's what's important about this. Just to go back down and get a little understanding on that. That's why we was talking about monophyletic groups, right? About descendants, how they're related. This is how it will look. It will be one group connected from its ancestral node, right? IJK is an ancestral node. So if IJK, if we had a group of IJ and K, right? Let's go back over here. If we had a group of IJ and K, and we wanted to make it monophyletic, one, we got to make these three groups. Can we also make these one? Has A and B and D and E ever been one? No. A and B and D and E never been one. That's important. When I say never been one, you can't just merge only A and B and D and E without merging CF. You can't merge them. You can't do it like that. You can't merge A and B and D and E because A and B and D and E are separated by CT, right? That's what separates DE and CF is CT. So A and B has to get through CT. A and B has to make a CT to make these. So A and B doesn't make CF groups. It can't make Shem and Ham. I mean Shem and Japheth. So A and B being of Ham can't make a CT. So it can't make a Shemite and it can't make a Japhethite. You see what I'm saying here? That would make sense as them all being brother clades from one root splitting and making three different lineages, right? So you're going to have your A and B, which were originally one, that don't make CT. And from CT, you're going to get D and E and CF groups. See what I'm saying here? So these are going to be different groups, right? That's where you're going to get the split and you're going to get different lineages that's going to come forth, right? And even if I just turn this 90 degrees left, right? You can see it's a tree, right? If you look at it, it's a tree, right? Let's go back to the tree and let's see what looks more familiar. Like if you look at the tree, you're going to get a break, right? From these different lineages. But zoom out just a little bit. You can see, right? We have a tree. And if we want to put them on a boat and make three different lineages that don't make each other, this is the only way to do it, right? There it is. You can see if we look at the tree, we got our A00 going down, and then we get a split from BT and CT. And remember, even on this design, it lets you know that A and B, right? If we look more closer at the design, right, we can see that the A and B were one, right? And they split at BT because we know B makes the other lineage. So you get your B lineage that's going to come off, that's breaking off, but is actually connected by these. So they're even in connection with CT. So that means they're family, they're related. But A and B doesn't make CT, right? That's what makes it important. That's why you got your CT right there. So you got your A and B and you got your CT groups. So with CT, right, when we look at the tree, if we was to put a name on all these groups, if we know that A and B was one, right, even as designed, A and B was one, D and E was one, but these lineages were united by C and F. That's also what we were talking about when we were talking about how these groups are family, right? For example, remember we had went over this information that they had put out when they was talking about the whole way that these groups are actually related and everything. It's just something that we know for sure. Right here, just talk about human origins and everything. The origin of all people, that DEYAP and CF P143, which we have one fossil in Spain, right? It'll tell you if you look it up on Wiki, no fossil found, but we have it in Spain, right? We had the actual sheet. So it lets us know that these were related, right? These were some of the earliest lineages that came from basically CT. The reason why it's called CT, BT, and CT is because it is every group from B to T, right? C to T, pretty much, right? CT, all the groups in between. But we have to understand which ones are what, and that's what this thing also talks about. That we actually would note that these lineages were related when we talk about this, but they are going to be making their own lineages. So CF and DE are actually outside of the areas of Africa, but they were making all other lineages, right? Now, just to show another thing, just to get a little understanding from it, we had talked about it as well. When we talk about F, how the F group breaks and everything, I'm just gonna go up here just to point that out real fast on, how the groups are right here. So looking at the tree, you can see what do we understand from the tree is what we understand. The haplogroup tree of Homo sapiens Y chromosome derived from haplotypes and subclades, right? Just talks about the recent common ancestors and everything. Just going to skip down right to where we get the answer and everything. So it's going to talk about right here. This is what we want to talk about. The split right here. Haplogroups F through R. So remember, why is it counting F and R together? Because they split from CT. That's CT, right? CT makes your DE and your C and F groups. So your C and your F groups. So you get your C and your F groups. So it's gonna count this CF as one family, but it's gonna be certain details about F to R. So F to R. So F to R. It's gonna give us details about F to R. That's so right here you can see haplogroups F through R, which includes T, represents this is what I'll get this word twisted. Basically basically from Europe, Europeoids. I don't know how we will word that. It's basically Caucasoids, basically from Europe, people from the north who arose 58,000 years before present. Now, remember, I was talking about this, right? I was talking about this before, that if you've seen when I talked about L3, that sometimes you'll see different dates on those fossils. Fossils have different dates than your out of Africa scale, right? You can have a fossil that's 9,000 years old. That same fossil, if you take it and put it on the out of Africa scale, can be 100,000 years old, right? If you want evidence for that, I can show that if we can talk about that. But just understand these years when we talk about these years, that a lot of this is concerning the out of Africa scale. There's also, when understood in out of Africa scale, the fossils start to show that people are not out of Africa, based on putting those fossils to the out of Africa scale. But haplogroup F R, which includes T, represents basically those people from Europe, Caucasoids, who arose 58,000 years before present, right? Is letting us know that that group is representing a whole group that's one. That's one family. So it's saying F to R are related. F and R has relation together because they have an ancestral node. F makes IJK. IJK makes IJ and your K groups, right? So let's go back to that design over here. So I'm gonna turn this back. All right. And let's get back to this design. So he splits right here. So he splits here. He separates these over here. So he splits there. But what's interesting is then they're removed from their root. So we actually have to split it from a node. We have to split it from his root. But if we split here, then this split was a lineage. That means this would mean that this lineage on this side, which would make this lineage, if we split here, this lineage, if this lineage was wiped out, right? Having F9 would make it older because F-M89 is actually one of the oldest ones on this tree. Now, you'll also see that sometimes it'll say A and all those things are older, but when you start looking at the fossils, they start speaking a different story. That we'll start seeing F being one of the oldest groups because F is actually the group that makes Isham, the K group from Isham. So it's having really ancient dates on it, really, really ancient dates, older than the A groups, right? You look at the fossils, the A groups are not as old as F. F is Japheth. That's the older brother, the older lineage. This lineage is the maker of all these. So if you cut there, right, you're gonna have one problem where now you just cut off the children of this line. And if you cut here and make this a separate line than this one, that doesn't make sense at all. That would make no sense. Where's your ancestral node, right? If you cut here, right? If you're cutting here and making all these, how are you linking them? Are you linking them by CT? If we're linking, or are we saying that there is no CT, right? We can't say there's no CT because we have evidence for it. We have evidence for the fossils of these lineages being how they are connected. So we also have to understand if CT is one lineage that makes all these lineages, right? We have to understand that has to be a split node. That node has to be counted as a split where the area splits. But if we count it over here at IJK, then one, we're causing a problem of declaring that this family is not related with this family when this whole family is related with IJK. You know what I'm saying? And if we was to say that that's Noah, then we have a worser problem. We have a worser problem because that lineage, if it was Noah, it can't make A and B, nor D and E or C groups, let alone the groups that's ahead of it, F, G, and H. So IJK is not Noah. That's what's important. IJK cannot be Noah because it would make no sense. It would make no sense to the split. It just would not make no sense in the mind of any type of creation. That's important to understand. Why is that important? Because one of these has to be Jews, right? One of these has to be Jews based on the understanding of these things. That's what we're seeing here. We're seeing that if we make the ancestral node at its original split at CT and BT, then we can paint the picture of the biblical narrative and put them on a boat. We cannot put these on a boat because A and B doesn't make CT. So A and B right here can't make the C groups. Like I'm also missing F here, I mean H. There's also H that he talks about is connected with these. Let me put that here. It doesn't make these groups, right? We actually put this right here because there's also a H he says is Hamites. All right. So he says that A and B, we can't make these one. We can't make these one. A and B is never one with C and D and F and H. You can't make them one. If you try to put that on a boat, that's how it's gonna look. In fact, if you was to try to put this as one, H and G, which that's also what I'm missing, is the G on here. So he says these are the Hamites. He says, right? He says A B, which was never one with C, and never one with G, nor D, nor F or H. Right. So just important to understand, right? Just important to understand what I'm saying here is that if we was to put these all together, right? This is what we can probably get if we make them monophyletic. We can make obviously D and E one and A and B one, and we can make H and G and F one under F-M89. We can make F-M89, but that makes Helm three different people. That makes Helm three different lines of people because A and B cannot go into and make a CT lineage. So that means C is the cutoff there. A and B cut off by C. That's why you can actually note that if you note on an unrooted chart, right? If we look at an unrooted chart, we can get the same design, right? We can see right here on an unrooted chart, you can see that D and E, they will have an ancestral node that will connect together, right? But you also have a different node here. There's a different change here. A and B, which are separate from each other by CT. So these are going to be a different lineage, which actually are coming from, as your B is going to come from your BT, and your A and Bs are going to be related, connected together on one node. But there's going to be a difference when you get your CT lineages. So your CT lineages, right? Your CT lineages, this would be where you get your CT lineage. There'll be a C, and you'll get your D and E lineages, and then you'll get your F. All these are one. All these branches are actually one with F. When these came forth, they're actually extending off of F's branch. That's actually important. It's kind of hard to see, but as these go out, there's another branch they extend off of that if you was to cut those off, they wouldn't exist. They wouldn't exist without F. They couldn't exist without IJK. That they're one. They're one like that. So that's actually very important that they're actually united. They're actually united together. So if IJK was one, right, then we can't put them on a boat. We couldn't put them on a boat. There's no way. And if someone has a different design, I'm saving this here. I'm just gonna save this, and I'm gonna, y'all willing, hopefully have a conversation with someone who want to talk about Haplogroup T. I really want to have a conversation on someone with Haplogroup T, and someone that's not gonna cuss and be unprofessional and everything. Someone that's gonna still keep it, at least kid friendly. No need to cuss, no need to fight, no need to scramble and all that. Just source talk. So if someone wants to talk about that, let's talk about that. But this is the understanding that you need to understand when you're looking at something like Dr. Nathan Jeanson's design. I was talking about it ever since it came out. No, I'm not a geneticist, but I do understand how these genetics do break down. It makes clear sense how the families are related. You can't just break it any type of way you want. This doesn't work, and you can't put them on a boat. You can't put them on a boat at all. I would love to see someone put these lineages on a boat monophyletically. Put them on a boat and try to make IJK make sense with this mess over here. It's not going to work. So if anyone has any questions, that's all I want to talk about today. I've been thinking, doing something. I'm going to do something on the Gaussians and some things later that is going to be separate. But this is just something that I was talking about. The reason why I thought this was important, because I think truth is important. And, the hype can be deceitful, right? Deceitful, right? So that's the conclusion here. So that's what we have to look into. We look different before the band to expansion. E groups. So I know your E groups may have looked a little different, but based on the findings on, just to show you this, brother, based on the findings on the oldest E groups, they still had darker skin, even though it was with European females. So a lot of them still had darker skin. So some of them had light skin that went upwards. That's going to be your E-335. It's going to be your E-35 that mixed in with some of the early groups that basically went up this way. Like we can see what the Natufians are, and they went up this way. You'll have different E's, E2s, E1A, E1B, 1B, of course, M35 and M34 that went this way. But most of the E groups back then looked at dark skin. Most of the E groups that was noted back then that was moving around, they had dark skin. Something. I was talking about basically I call them Eber-Asians, right? Eber-Asians, right? Because they have links and ties to ancient Eber. That's why I call them Eber-Asians. I know they're gonna call them what they want. Lineages of individuals that have connections to Spain. But let me show you something with the. Here they are. All right, so you can see right here, if you've seen the little information on some of the early E groups, you can see that it will talk about basically when they tested some of their genetics, they had SLC24A5, right? They didn't have that one. That one's actually supposedly associated with lighter skin color, right? They tested to see if they had SLC 24A2 associated with light skin color, but they didn't. And they didn't have the one of the lighter eye color or blue color. They didn't have that. So they actually had things that were like SLC, basically 24A4 alleles associated with dark eye color, right? They talk about they had a lot of darker skin, right? So E groups, yeah, they would have some darker skin, but also we can find other groups, talking about different changes and of their skin colors and stuff. With like J groups with darker skin, A groups we find with light skin, things like that. So skin, it all depends, but majority of this group did look like most of them were darker skin. Even with like you see right here, they would have some European mtDNA, and they would have some of the mDNA, which that one goes like the islands, far island out areas, like you know China, far out that way. So that's something. Yeah, it's interesting. It is interesting to note that their skin color was still dark, though a lot of them had European females. It's possible that some could have also end up looking lighter skin as well. So mixing in that matter with males and females goes way back. So it could have been early lineages of people, you know, like for example, we can get early lineages of, let's say, some of the Hamites had women's with L groups, right? We can have the L group all of a sudden mixing with someone with the N group, right? Under CF, mixing with one of the N groups or something like that. And we can have other lineages, of N or M females mixing with D and E lineage. So that mix can happen, and we can have different colors. But it looks like majority of certain groups had certain colors to them. So, just to make it a little more understandable, you know, you're gonna get different. We can also break this down and put lineages here and show, how certain ones are connecting and everything, because the branch of IJK or GHIJK connects this whole branch, right? The connection of IJK or GHIJK, IJK connects all these lineages. So a lot of these lineages have major connections to them. So it's something that we can look into and get an understanding of when we break these things down. But this is the only way to fit them on a boat. What you're seeing here, this is the only way to fit all these lineages that says in a biblical narrative that the whole world is filled today with the descendants of Ham, Shem, and Japheth. And if we was to take them and put them on a boat, that's how it would basically look. That we would have DE as one group, CF as one group, and A and B as one group. Because we couldn't merge anymore. We couldn't merge any more closer than that. We haven't found any other linking to link A and B to these groups, because that CT divide, that CT matters a lot. It's just something that when people look at this stuff, they have to understand CT is one of the most important haplogroups, I believe, in the whole genetic tree, CT itself, because CT is the divide. CT is actually the divide of the change of peoples, right? That's why you're going to have DE, CF, and A and B groups. Have a little different, something a little different on there. So that's a great question, because that's something to think about on those things. But yes, we see that sometimes even ancient times we can have to this day. So you can see that that's going to be something that's important. That's right. All right. So with that, family, what do you think? Do you think that Jeanson's design works? Do you think that there's another way to try to fit these all and be one? Who do you think is Noah on this design? Someone who knows this design, can you put these lineages on a boat? Right? I can't even fathom or imagine how it would look to try to make these one and put them on one boat, right? Because if we're declaring that this is Japheth, Ham, and Shem, right? Can we actually put them on a boat at the same time and show Ham, Shem, and Japheth, right? Can we show who is Ham, who is Shem, and who is Japheth, and show that they make three different lineages that don't make each other? And can we show what lineage will be most likely that split? Where is Noah, right? IJK is not Noah. Who is IJK? It's not Noah, right? IJK is not Noah. So I'm just gonna put that right there. So not right? Noah. If someone disagrees, if someone thinks that IJK is Noah, I would like to see how you would put that into a sense. How would you show that from IJK, from IJ, you will get Japheth, and from K, you will get Shem? I would like to see how you will get IJK as being a splitted lineage, a lineage of Ham and or Japheth and Shem, right? Because if we're saying, if someone believes Jeanson's design, I'm showing you this because if you seen what I said, you understand what I'm saying. That the design that Jeanson is designing, he's selling a lie. That's, I think it's right here. Just show that real fast. I think it's on this one. No, I might have to, oh, it's right here. I don't know why I didn't go to it. All right, so let me just show what I mean. Let me just find one of these that will probably address this okay-ish, and I'm gonna show something after this. All right, I'll just point out right here. So right here at IJ and K groups, this is going to be your K-M9. So as your IJ and your K groups, which this is actually IJK. IJK is where this splits. Can you show me at this split, that's imagination, can you show me that at this split we're going to get Hamites, Shemites, and Japhanites? Right? Right? If we're going to say that these are Hamites, show me how we can get, as we know from this split, we get from his design, Japhanites and Shemites. But show me how you can get from this split as a genetic professional, if there's a genetic professional or anyone who understands just the nodes, just understand the nodes itself, right? If you understand the nodes, show me how from IJK you can get a third split. How you can get a third split, a third lineage from that lineage. Right? You gotta show me how that would look. And I'm telling you, it will be like doing something like this, right? It's like doing something like this. You're looking at, you know that F-M89 makes all these lineages. But you're saying that a split happens from a son of F-M89 because the actual fossils of F, IJK, and GHIJK are found. There's multiple sons from F. F has F1s, F2s. G's have multiple sons. All those, and they're all showing that they're related coming from F, right? They descend from F. They don't make their own, right? J doesn't come out and makes itself, right? IJK is one, but what made IJK, right? Or IJ is one, but we know IJK made IJ, right? We know that these ones are related. We know that they're connected. They have a connection. They make each other, right? So the conclusion is this. It's this the conclusion, just to make the understanding. Can you show us that though you get a split at IJK and makes IJ groups and your K-M89 groups or your KM9 groups, can you show that from that split you can get a separate family from K dash from IJK, that you can get Japhanites and Shemites, and somehow, some way show the split that makes the Hamites? Because the split doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. Well, if you understand ancestral nodes, you can't split it like this. This doesn't work at all. That's not how it breaks. That's not how it splits. It splits at a certain way. A and B does R1, but we know that those A and Bs do not make CT. But actually from CT comes a B. That A and B is connected together by that CT. So we know CT is a parent lineage that makes these lineages. So CT is over these lineages. So if CT is the split that connects these, right? BT and CT is what connects A and B. CT, BT and CT, right? BT and CT connects A and B together. And we know that these are Hamites, but we know that these cannot make these. Neither can we say that we can't just take a bunch of groups and put them together. We can't just make them one. We can't take D and E and ever make them one with A and B. You can never make A and B and DE the same unless you go to the root of CT. You hear what I'm saying? This is what I'm saying. I'm saying that on this design alone, right? If we were to take A and B and D and D and E, and we was to just have those two on a boat, we can't make them one ever unless we link them, right? Unless we bring them back. Unless we bring them back to a lineage that makes both of them, right? Unless we bring them back to a lineage that makes both of them, but it just so happens that the lineage that both of these also makes CF. So the lineage that makes D and E also makes your CF groups. So that's bringing them back to CT, right? CT will be the one that makes these groups. So if we wanted to bring A and B back to its ancestral node, we're bringing it back to CT. And D and E come from CT. That means we're connecting it with CF. Now, are we only connecting it with CF? That's the question. And are we connecting them with CF but not, right? Are we saying that are we saying that none of these have connections with IJK? Right? Does none of these have connections with IJK? Does any of these make these? Because remember, a Hamite cannot make a Japhethite, and a Japhethite cannot make a Shemite. They can't make each other. So if we're connecting all these at their ancestral nodes, right? Does this also come from that node? And how so does it come from that node? Does it come directly from that node? Is it also from directly from here? So that we can have Ham, and then from this split, right? Are we saying that from this split right here, right? Let me just do it right here. From this split, are you saying that from this split here, we're going to get a lineage of I and J? He's telling us that from here, we're going to get I and J. We can say that from here, we're going to get I and J, and then we're also going to get your K9 groups. You're also going to get your K-M9 groups, right? Like T. So that's what I'm saying, because the E, if the E is on this side, to make that ancestral node with this. Now, remember, let me make sure I point this out, that this makes this. Remember that this actually makes this, then it makes this, then it makes this. Remember that. But remember what I just showed you over here. Show me any one of these that make the other one. A and B doesn't make CT. D and E doesn't make CF. CF doesn't make DE. CF does not make A and B, nor does DE make A and B. So we know A and B doesn't make CT. So you see, you got three groups separate from each other. But right here, if you connect A and B to its ancestral node, which is CT and BT, you're connecting everyone. You see what I'm saying? You're connecting everyone because you're connecting A and B, D and E, and CF groups. You're connecting them all together. That means you're saying that from one lineage, one family of Ham came everyone. That's not true. And that's the out of Africa design. Do you know that that's actually this what you're seeing right here on this side is actually out of, right, Africa. Actually out of Africa. That's the out of Africa design. Now, which one of these look more like the out of Africa design? Which one of these look more like the out of Africa design? Because if you're saying everyone started as A, B, then it became a D and E, then it became C and F, and somehow, some way, you're slapping together, right? Under the CF groups. Because remember, underneath here, you get two groups. You're going to get two groups from this F. And from the, you're going to get two groups. So right here, you're going to get C, right? And this is what he's saying is the Hamites, remember. And over here, you get F-M89. So you see what's going on over here? So right here, and then from F-M89, right? Let me just show you what we're going to get. We're going to get, right, one lineage of HIJK. From that, you're going to get your G, right? From that lineage, you're going to get a G, right? You're going to get a G. Now we got to get an H. From that lineage, there's a break to another lineage. That lineage, I know it looks confusing, but this is what you got to do when you're doing that. HIJK, right? HIJK from that lineage, right? That's when you're going to get from here, right? A H. And then you notice what you're going to get from HIJK. If you're going to get your H, there's another lineage that comes right from HIJK, and that's IJK. So that's what you're seeing there. Notice what I'm saying. A and B doesn't make CT, right? And then you're going to get D, E, and CF groups that don't make each other. But notice what you're seeing here. If you link A and B to its ancestral node, you're linking CT to DE. If you link that by CT, you're also linking CF. That's where you're going to get your F groups. That's where you're going to get from your GHIJK, your G groups, and you're going to get your H groups. Then you're going to get your break from that, right? How are we going to separate these from these? How are we going to make these without these? How are we going to make IJK, which is said Japheth, and how are we going to make K, which is said Shem, without F-M89? That's what I'm concluding. How can you make these any other way unless it's the out of Africa design? Unless it was using the out of Africa concept that is false. The out of Africa concept is concluding that A and B groups made all these lineages. But rather, I'm showing you that all these lineages are separate and that we don't have Noah today. We don't have Noah to test. We don't have exactly Adam to test. We don't have exactly Noah. We don't have exactly Adam. We don't have exactly those lineages. So it makes sense that we found lineages of his sons. We didn't find the ancients. We didn't find exactly Noah. We can't say we found Noah. We found Enoch. We found Adam. We can't say that we found those lineages. That was the problem with declaring a lineage Y chromosome Adam, because it's trying to make you mentally think A groups make every other group underneath it. But it doesn't. That's what that design was. That this information, if you've seen this paper, it'll tell you in almost every place of those A groups that those A groups do not make CT groups. In all those places, you'll see that A groups do not make CT groups, right? That's how important it is when you want to make an ancestral node to know who is who. This is the out of Africa design. This is the out of Africa design. It doesn't matter if someone says the J are Jews and these are Japheth, or if they said these are Japheth and these are Jews. It doesn't matter which one they choose, because the only way they can connect it if they try to connect A and B to all these lineages and use the out of Africa concept, which is wrong. The out of Africa concept is wrong. It's not correct at all. I'm telling you that in truth. That these are going to be the splits. That A and B and D and E are going to split at one lineage. They're going to split at one lineage. And that's going to be from CT. So they're going to split from CT as BT and CT is how A and B is connected. BT and CT is how A and B is connected. And that's also how CT is connected. BT and CT are connected and they split. That's showing that Noah had evidence that he had came from a lineage that came from another lineage. Because he divided into these three sons that fill the whole earth. But the lineage of, remember, we already pointed out A00, right? If we go back, the wiped out lineages are A000 and A0000. So those are the lineages that's wiped out. Those are going to be the lineage that's wiped out. So we have evidence of a root. We have evidence of a root and a wiped out lineage, wiped out lineages. And then we have, remember, none of these A's make BT. So we got to note from BT comes all modern people. All people, especially CT, are what's the word I'm looking for? They're going to be connected, right? Let me go to something over here. Right? They're going to be being one. In fact, let me go to this. They're going to be connected, being one family. That's why what you're seeing here is a star graph. It shoots out, right? We don't have the original. The root is always going to be a root. When you have a tree, it's always going to be a root, but that root is just saying that it has to start somewhere. We don't have the actual start. They don't have the actual real start. They just go as far back as they possibly could. That's what the root is for, is to address the start. And from a star graph, you're seeing where it's centered out and shot out from. So it's centered out at BT and CT. That BT and CT divides these all, and that you get these different lineages. So we can get three lineages. We can get three lineages and fit them on a boat. We can fit those three lineages on a boat, but we can't do it with the out of Africa concept because the out of Africa concept is false and it doesn't make sense. And that's what Jeanson was actually using, whether he said he wasn't or not. Connect A and B and D and E groups. If you connect A and B and D and E groups, you connected CT. If you connect CT, you're connecting C and F, which he concludes in his own paper, as you can see here. By knowing that he's connecting CF, he connects A and B with C and C, D, E with F, because C and F are connected, and then G and H as well. So you're connecting all these lineages, all these that makes IJ, that IJ splits. That he says IJ splits, and it makes one line and it makes another line. And remember, all those come from this combination of F-M89, from GHIJK, from HIJK. Then you get IJK. So remember, it goes CF makes F dash M89, which makes GHIJK, which makes HIJK, which makes IJK. So if we was to try to fit this lineage of Ham on one boat with this combination to try to make them one, you have to make them CT. That means you're making them all one with this group. And that's not how CT splits. That's not how CT splits. So if we already have two different lineages here. So we would have to declare that CT was Ham if we was to say that these were all one. And to put this on one boat, what this will look like, this will be all CT, this will be IJ, and this will be K. But even just making this CT, saying that Ham is CT would make no sense. It would make no sense at all. But rather, it would make more sense if we said CT was a split, a lineage that makes different lineages, rather than, because we know sometimes you'll see CTs change to different things, even these under here, because all these are CT. All these will be made by one person. If we said this was Ham, then we're saying that Ham made all these. That's the out of Africa concept. That's what the out of Africa concept is. If you believe that, if you believe the biblical narrative, if you believe this, right? If you believe the biblical narrative that Noah made 3 sons and that his 3 sons didn't make anyone else. His Ham made Hamites, Shem made Shemites, and Japheth made Japhethites. If you believe that, then you actually would believe that Noah would create lineages of a combination of A and B sons, D and E sons, and CF sons. There's nothing like he made IJ Japheth, and he made A B C D E G F H Ham, and you can't make just T and L and all K groups, only Shem. When we have IJK as the father of IJ and K. So we have to just to make it clear, what just to summarize and get it all understood on what I'm saying here. Just to get it understood. What I'm concluding here is if you was to put these lineages on a boat, one more time, you cannot put Jeanson's design on a boat, right? That's what I'm concluding here. You cannot put this design on a boat. You cannot. And if someone can do it, this is what I'm saying. I'm not saying that it can't be done, even though when we look at genetics and the scientific method, it's impossible. I want to see what Jeanson is using in his design to declare where is Noah, that we got this solid understanding of all lineages today, that all these lineages is made from, as we see, this lineage is IJ and K. So that's going to be a Japhethite and that's going to be a Shemite. So from a line that's going to make whatever this is, right? So that's the question. Can we show these lineages all on one boat? I don't think we can show Jeanson's design on one boat because it's the out of Africa. It's the out of Africa design. That's what it is. So for those that understand, amen. But for those that don't understand, that's all right. Just understand that this is what a lot of people are talking about right now. They talk about who is who because it matches with history. It's really bringing out a lot of depth in the biblical narrative as history gives us more understanding of the biblical narrative. Not saying you can't understand a biblical narrative without history and all that, but it is going to be important for understanding ancient things that were going on in kingdoms, like certain practices and certain culture things that were going on at times. Those things are important. It's also important to understand this because when people think a Canaanite or Egyptian, a lot of people think one person or one types of people, but really genetics is showing us that the lands were merged with a bunch of different types of people, right? But if we want to put the biblical narrative to perspective, who would fit on a boat, right? I don't think you can put I and J as Japheth. I don't think you can put KM9 as Shem and make A and B, D and E, G, F, H as Hamites and make them on one boat. You can't put them on one boat and make it 4 people, 4 men, right? You got to have 4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4 men on one boat that don't make each other. So can you put 4 men on a boat and show that those lineages don't make each other? So that's the question. Let's do that? No. It just shows that this is actually making one family that says come from A and B, and then you get everyone else. But rather, what I'm showing you is that A and B is different, D and E is different, C and F is different, and all can be saved in Christ. So with that, I'm going to say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father in heaven, honor be thy name. May thy kingdom come. May thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us each day our daily bread. Forgive us of our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us on a righteous path and guard us from evil one. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen, family. So hope God willing, I have a conversation with this individual or anyone who wants to have a conversation on these things, as I do believe it does bring edification to the truth that's already established. So, with that, family, be blessed, be beloved, and amen.